Before we dive into this spine-chilling story, please subscribe for more daily creepy horror stories. So I always come back for Christmas. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's just because it's what I'm supposed to do. I'm Mason, by the way. Been years since I actually lived here. Every Christmas, I find myself driving back to my mom's house, even though, honestly, I'd rather not. It's like this weird pull I can't ignore, even though I can't stand the place anymore. I left home right after I graduated, moved out, started my life, got away from the routine, the rules, and the memories. Most people think I left because of the usual stuff, college, work, whatever. But the truth? It's my dad. He died on Christmas Day a few years ago. Anyway, after that, I just couldn't deal with it. So I left. But every year, like clockwork, I come back. I pull up to the house, same place it's always been. The old wood floors, the smell of pine and cinnamon, that weird mix that fills the air every Christmas. It's comforting in a way, but also kind of suffocating. I guess I'll never get used to it. The tree's already up when I walk in, all lit up, with ornaments that I swear are older than I am. It's like my mom's trying to freeze time, keep everything exactly the same, like nothing ever changes. When I step through the front door, there she is. My mom. Standing there, grinning at me like she's been waiting for this moment all year. Same smile she's had for years now. It's not real, though. Haven't seen her smile like that since before Dad died, but I don't bring it up. I never do. I just nod, say hey, and head upstairs to my old room. I don't know why I even bother staying here. The room feels like it's still mine, but it doesn't feel like home. It's like I'm living in someone else's life. But it's easier to just stay here than deal with all the questions if I don't. Mom would probably lose it if I stayed somewhere else. So I just deal with it. I walk into the living room, and there it is, the Christmas tree, just like every year. It's huge and covered in all the same decorations. There's the star ornament waiting on the kitchen counter. It's tradition. I don't even need to ask why it's there. I just grab it and go through the motions, hanging it on top of the tree. I've done it every year, even though I never really get why. My mom's big on rules, and when I say big, I mean huge. Every year, she drills these things into me like they're the only thing keeping us from falling apart. She's got this book she keeps hidden in the living room, a book full of rules we have to follow. I don't know if it's something she believes in or if it's just a way to deal with everything that happened with Dad, but she goes over them every damn year. I don't argue, I just follow them, even if they don't make much sense. Here's the rundown of the rules. Rules. Rule 1. Always hang the star ornament on the tree first. Rule 2. Do not speak when the clock strikes midnight. Rule 3. Leave one plate of food untouched during dinner. Rule 4. Sing a carol in unison at midnight. Rule 5. Do not enter the basement during the 12 days of Christmas. Rule 6. Never remove the wreath from the front door. Sounds simple, right? It's not. The basement one, that one always gets me. I don't know why, but it's different from the others. My mom says it like she's warning me, like she's scared of something down there. But I've always followed the rules. I don't like to break them. It's easier that way. It's easier not to question things. So I head into the kitchen to grab something to eat, trying to ignore the heavy feeling that always comes with being back here. Mom's in the living room, adjusting the ornaments on the tree like she's in some kind of trance. I can hear the old clock ticking in the background, the sound almost louder than the usual noise in the house. I sit down at the kitchen table, and the whole place feels off, like it's stuck in time. I start eating, but something doesn't feel right. I can't shake the idea that Dad's spirit is still here, even though I know it's crazy. It's probably just the old house messing with my head. But still, every year the same damn rules, and every year I follow them, because that's what's expected. But deep down I wonder, what would happen if I didn't? The house is still and quiet as I begin to decorate the tree. It's strange how familiar this all feels, even though I've been away for so long. The same old routine, the same steps. I grab the star ornament from the counter and hold it in my hands for a second, feeling the cool glass against my skin. My mom's already arranged everything, like she always does, as if nothing's changed. The tree's been up for a few days, and the lights are twinkling softly, casting a warm glow over the room. I don't know why, but I feel this odd sense of weight in the air. I can't shake it. I place the star on the tree, but something about it feels off. I can't explain it. It's just a stupid ornament, right? It's always the first thing to go on top. The first, no matter what. I remember my mom always saying that. The star has to go on first. Everything else can wait, Mason. I sigh, trying to push the feeling away. It's just a rule. One of those things you do without asking why. I hear my mom moving around in the other room. I'm not sure what she's doing, but I know she's probably watching me from the doorway, waiting for me to do things right. It's like she's always there, checking to make sure I follow every little thing. She won't outright say it, but I can feel her eyes on me. It's like she's holding her breath, waiting for me to mess up. I take a few steps back to admire the tree, trying to get the angle just right. The ornaments catch the light, their vibrant reds, golds, and greens reflecting against the soft glow from the string lights. I swear, each one of them has a tiny little world inside it, shimmering like a reflection of something I can't quite see. But something doesn't feel right. I can't tell if it's the house being too quiet or if it's just me, but I keep thinking about how I've been doing this for years. Each year, I come home, follow the routine, decorate the tree, sit down for dinner, listen to my mom talk about her favorite Christmas memories. It's the same as it's always been. I adjust a few of the ornaments, making sure they're spaced evenly, and I think about the dinner we're supposed to have later. I know it's going to be exactly like it always is. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, and that weird cranberry sauce my mom insists on serving. Every year I tell her it's weird, but she swears it's tradition. I hear her again, calling from the kitchen, just out of sight. Her voice floats through the hallway. "Mason, can you help me with the table? I've got the plates ready." "Yeah, I'll be there in a second," I call back, trying to keep my voice light. I don't want her to think something's wrong. I glance back at the tree, adjusting one last ornament. It's done. But even though everything looks perfect, I don't feel like it's Christmas this year. It doesn't feel like it used to when I was younger. Back then, I would have been running around the house with my sister, arguing over who got to put the star on top. I shake the thought away. It's been years since she left. I hear my mom again, this time closer. "Mason, dinner's almost ready. You should sit down and relax for a while. It's Christmas Eve after all." "Yeah, sure. I'll be there in a minute," I reply, my voice a little quieter this time. I glance at the table in the next room, where my mom's already set the plates. The food's been laid out and everything's ready to go. But there's one thing that stands out. A plate, sitting alone on the edge of the table, untouched. It's part of the routine. The rule. Leave one plate of food untouched during dinner. I don't even know why anymore, but it's something we've always done. I could ask my mom, but I already know she'll just give me one of those looks. Like it's not something you question, just something you do. I take a breath and step out of the living room, walking toward the dining area. I spot my mom moving around the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she arranges the food on the counter. The smell of turkey and mashed potatoes fills the air, and for a second, it almost feels like nothing's changed. Like everything is the same as it was when I was a kid. "Everything looks great," I tell her, trying to sound casual. She looks up from the counter and smiles at me, but I can tell it's not the same smile she used to give. It's more like something forced. A mask she puts on for everyone's sake. "Thank you, sweetie," she says. "I'm just glad you could make it home this year." "Yeah, me too," I reply, glancing over at the tree again, the star shining at the top, glimmering like it always does. I don't know why, but I keep thinking about the rules. The ones we've followed for as long as I can remember. The star, the plate of food, the silence at midnight. They all just feel like rituals now, things to get through, things to keep us from questioning what's really going on. I sit down at the table, glancing out the window at the darkening sky. The sun's just about set, and I know what comes next. The carols, the dinner, the silence. It's the same every year. And I guess for some reason that makes it feel safe. Like if I just follow the rules, nothing bad will happen. But deep down, I know it's not that simple. Dinner is always quiet. The turkey's dry, the mashed potatoes too lumpy, but it's the same every year. The table's set the same way too, with one untouched plate. I glance at my mom, who's cutting into her food slowly, her eyes distant. She's not really here with me. She's lost in her own thoughts. I don't know what she's thinking, but I don't ask. I don't think she'd tell me if I did. Mom, I start, breaking the silence. Do you ever wonder why we keep doing this? I gesture to the table, the empty plate, the same old rituals. She doesn't look up. We do it because we have to, Mason. It's tradition. It's the same answer I've heard 1,000 times. Tradition. But it never feels right. It feels like we're just going through the motions, like something's missing, but we're too scared to say it out loud. I push the dry turkey around on my plate, trying to eat, but not really tasting it. The silence stretches between us, thick and heavy. The clock ticks steadily on the wall. After a few minutes, my mom finishes her meal, and I do the same. We sit there in the quiet, both lost in our own thoughts. The empty plate still sits there between us, waiting. The clock strikes 11, and I can feel the minutes slipping away. The ticking gets louder, and I can't ignore it anymore. Midnight is getting close. I glance over at my mom, who's busy in the kitchen, humming softly to herself. She's been preparing things, but I'm not sure what. Maybe the Carol book, maybe something else. It's hard to tell. She's always doing something when it gets close to midnight. I try to focus on something else, but the tension in the air is thick. The rule pops into my head: sing a carol in unison at midnight night. It's been the same for as long as I can remember, and I don't question it anymore. I check the clock again, almost there. My heart starts to pick up its pace, but I shake it off. It's just another Christmas, just another tradition. I tell myself that, but the weight of it all makes it harder to breathe. The clock strikes 12. Come on, Mason, my mom calls from the kitchen. It's time. I take one last look at the clock before heading toward her. The clock strikes midnight and the house falls silent. My mother stops humming, just like she always does, and I know it's time. We exchange a quick look, and without needing to say anything, we both start singing the carol. It's a tradition that's been the same for years. No change, no surprises. We sing in unison, the familiar words filling the room. The same song, the same tune, as if time itself stands still for a moment. I glance at my mom as we sing, watching her eyes half closed, lost in the rhythm of it. The whole thing feels automatic, like we've done this 1,000 times before, and we'll do it 1,000 times more. The words come easily. I don't even have to think about it. The rule is clear. Sing at midnight, and we do. And for those few minutes, everything feels normal, like nothing has changed. When we finish, there's a brief silence before my mom's smile. I breathe a little easier, though it's nothing more than the usual Christmas routine. The rules are something I've known for as long as I can remember. They've always been part of Christmas, part of the tradition, part of the way we make it through the holidays. But tonight, as I stand there finishing the carol, something feels different. My eyes drift toward the basement door, and I notice it more than I usually do. That door's always been off limits. I've never dared question it, never had a reason to. It's just always been a rule. But tonight, it feels like more than that. I can't help but stare at it for a long moment. I don't know why, but there's something pulling me to it. It's like I can feel some kind of quiet tension building inside me. My hand moves, almost like it's doing it on its own. It hovers near the doorknob, but then I freeze. The rule: never enter the basement during the 12 days of Christmas. That thought stops me cold. It's a rule my mom's made sure I've followed every year without fail. But still, there's a part of me, the part that's never really asked why, that's curious. Maybe it's the memories of my dad, the ones I've tried to bury. The basement. It feels like a place he would have gone. I wonder what's down there, what's been hidden all these years. The thought of it makes my heart race. I take a step toward the door, as if drawn to it. But before I reach it, I stop myself. I don't know why, but something's holding me back. Something that feels like it's tied to the past, to my father, and to the rules my mother's so adamant about. I turn away, shaking my head. Whatever's down there, whatever my mind is trying to coax me into, I know I shouldn't go. Not tonight. I take a deep breath and walk away. But the pull lingers, just beneath the surface. Later that night, after everything settles down, I finally crawl into bed. The house is quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes late at night. I can hear the soft creaks of the old wood beneath me as the house shifts with the temperature. The wind taps against the windows outside, like it's trying to get in. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, the sound louder in the silence of the room. It's almost soothing. But then, just as I'm starting to drift off, I hear something. It's faint at first, almost like a soft tapping, like someone knocking on a door in the distance. I blink, trying to shake off the drowsiness, but the sound is still there. It's light but distinct. I strain my ears, listening. Tap, tap, tap. I'm not sure what it is, but it's coming from somewhere downstairs. My first thought is that it's the house settling, maybe a loose shutter tapping against the wall. But then it comes again, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. It's definitely coming from downstairs, and it's unmistakable. My heart skips a beat, and I sit up in bed. The room feels colder now, the ticking of the clock louder in the stillness. The wind outside picks up a little, whistling through the cracks in the windows, but the knocking is still there, steady. I try to shake off the feeling, telling myself it's nothing. Maybe it's just the wind, maybe it's just the house, but the knocking continues. It's too clear, too real. It's not natural. I sit up in bed, feeling the weight of the silence around me. I hesitate. I'm supposed to stay quiet. I'm supposed to ignore it. But the sound, it's almost like it's calling me. Not in a way I can explain, but in a way that makes my skin prickle. The knocking stops. I sit there for a moment, staring at the dark ceiling, trying to make sense of it. The house is silent again, except for the wind that still murmurs outside. I try to convince myself it was nothing. Just a weird noise, maybe a pipe, maybe a branch tapping against the window. But something in the back of my mind nags at me. I turn over, pulling the blankets tighter around me, and try to push the thought away. But that tapping still echoes in my head. I don't know why I'm doing this. The temptation is too strong and I can't push it away. I stand there for a moment, hand on the cold metal knob of the basement door, trying to talk myself out of it. But something pulls me forward. The door creaks as I push it open, the sound sharp and unsettling, echoing in the otherwise silent house. A rush of cold air hits me, far colder than it should be for a basement. I feel a shiver run through me, but I step inside, my boots making faint thuds on the wooden stairs as I descend. With each step down, the light from the hall fades further. It's pitch black at the bottom, and the musty smell of old wood and dampness fills the air. I take another step, then another, my breath coming a little quicker as I move deeper into the dark. I try to shake off the feeling that something isn't right, but I can't. It's like the air is heavier here, the silence more oppressive. I keep moving until the stairs end, and I'm standing in the middle of the basement, surrounded by complete darkness. That's when I see it. At first I think it's just a trick of the light, or maybe my mind playing games with me, but then it becomes clearer, and I see the shape of a figure standing in the far corner. I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure is tall, broad-shouldered, just like my father. My breath catches in my throat, and for a split second, I think it's him. But as I take a step closer, I realize something isn't right. His face. It's him, but it's wrong. His features are twisted, stretched out of shape, as though they've been pulled by some unseen force. His eyes are wide, unblinking, but there's no life in them. I take another step, then it clicks. This isn't just him. It's his soul, trapped here. This is my father, somehow held in this basement, caught between this world and whatever lies beyond. There's no life in his eyes, no warmth, just a shell of the man I once knew. The pieces fall into place. He's been trapped here, bound to this house, to this holiday for who knows how long. I feel a wave of guilt and grief wash over me. For all these years I thought my father had just disappeared, leaving us behind. But he never left. He's been down here, bound to this place by whatever dark force controls this house, unable to move on. I step forward, my heart racing, but I can't bring myself to get any closer. What can I do? How can I help him? He's not a ghost. He's not just an image in my mind. He's a soul, trapped, just like the house itself. I stand there motionless, staring at him, at the man I knew, now a prisoner in the darkness. And I realize, with a sickening clarity, that I'm part of this too. The rules, the traditions, they've kept him here, and now they're pulling me in. I want to run. I want to escape. But I can't. I'm not sure I can leave this place. Not anymore. The morning light filters through the curtains, but I can't shake the darkness that's settled in my chest. The house feels hollow, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. waiting for me to ask the question I've been avoiding. I find my mother in the kitchen, standing by the sink, her back to me. She's staring out the window, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like she's holding herself together. I can see the strain in her shoulders, the way she's trying to mask the exhaustion with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. I can't keep this inside any longer. I need to know the truth. I need to understand what's been happening, what's been haunting us all these years. Why is he still here? I ask, my voice trembling. Why is Dad haunting the house? She doesn't turn to face me at first. Her body goes rigid, and I know she's heard me, but she doesn't answer. I take a step closer, my heart pounding, and try again. I saw him, Mom, down in the basement. His face, it was him, but it wasn't. What's happening? Why is he still here? Her breath hitches, and then she slowly turns to face me. Her eyes are wide, glazed with tears, and I see the years of guilt etched into her face. She trembles as she speaks, each word weighed down by an unbearable truth. Your father, she starts, her voice shaky like she's afraid to say it out loud. He died here, Mason, on Christmas Day, many years ago. I feel my chest tighten, my throat goes dry. I was the one who, she trails off, her voice breaking. I was the one who caused it. We were arguing. I pushed him. He fell down the basement stairs. His head, it struck the floor. He died instantly. I never meant for it to happen. I loved him, but he died because of me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I feel the room spinning, the walls closing in as everything I thought I understood about my father, about this house, unravels. My mother's confession echoes in my mind over and over. I can't breathe, can't think straight. Her sobs fill the silence between us, and I feel a strange mix of anger and sorrow. I want to scream to demand answers, but I can't. I'm too stunned to form the words. The rules. I say quietly, barely able to speak. The things you made us do every year, they were to keep him here, weren't they? To keep his spirit from hurting us? She shakes her head slowly, her eyes filled with sorrow. No, Mason, the rules weren't to trap him. They were to protect us. After your father died, I felt him. His spirit, it followed the house. I could feel it in the walls, in the air, and I just knew, that if we didn't do something, it would destroy us. I take a shaky breath, trying to comprehend her words. I didn't know what to do, she continues, tears streaming down her face. I wrote the rules because I thought if we followed them exactly, if we never went into the basement, if we never broke the rituals, his spirit wouldn't be able to reach us. I thought it was the only way to keep him from hurting us. Her eyes drop to the floor, and she whispers, but the more I followed the rules, the more I realized they were the only thing keeping us safe. Every year, every little ritual, it's what kept us from the spirit. I came to believe that if we didn't follow them, we'd be lost. I thought I was protecting you, Mason. I never meant for this to go on so long. I can hardly process what she's saying. All this time, I thought the rules were about holding my father's spirit in check, but they weren't. They were about keeping us safe from whatever was left of him, something twisted, something that had no rest. My mother's face crumples, and she sobs, the weight of her own guilt overwhelming her. But now I see, she says, we've been trapped in this cycle. The house, the rules, everything. I thought I was protecting you, but I've only kept us stuck. I never wanted this to be your life, Mason. I never wanted you to feel this burden. My mind races. My father's spirit wasn't haunting us because of some curse. It was his guilt, his anger, his restlessness that had been left behind after his death. And my mother had been trying to keep us safe from it, trying to prevent something terrible from happening. I'm silent for a long moment, processing everything. Finally, I speak. I have to end this, Mom, I say, my voice firm despite the ache in my chest. I have to end this. I can't keep living like this. We can't keep living like this. Her eyes widen with fear, but there's a glimmer of hope in them too. You can't, Mason, the rules. I know, I say, cutting her off, but I can't keep living in the past. I have to set things right. I have to free Dad's soul. I have to break the cycle. She looks at me, her face torn between fear and relief. She nods slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted you to carry this burden, Mason, but if you think you can, if you think breaking the rules is the way to set him free. I nod, my heart heavy but resolute. I'll do whatever it takes. With that, I leave the kitchen, determined to end this once and for all. I step into the basement, the air colder than I remember. It hits me like a cold slap, a familiar chill creeping down my spine. The room is dark, the shadows long and suffocating, and the only light comes from the dim glow of the overhead bulb, flickering intermittently. I can feel my father's presence before I even see him. It's like he's calling me, urging me to understand. I walk deeper into the basement, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence is overwhelming. The walls seem to close in around me, and I can hear my breath echoing in the stillness. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I see him. My father. He's standing there, his figure faint, almost translucent. His eyes are locked on mine, filled with a depth of emotion I can't quite place. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. I know now that he's been waiting for me to understand, to finally know the truth. I reach out, my voice shaking. "Dad," I say, almost in a whisper. "I know now. I understand what happened." His figure begins to flicker like a candle in the wind. The more I speak, the more his form starts to fade. It's not sudden, but it's unmistakable. The truth is doing something to him, something I don't fully understand yet. "I know how you died," I say, my voice steadier now, though still filled with emotion. "It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault." As the words leave my mouth, I see his form flicker again, more intensely this time. He starts to disappear, the edges of his body becoming blurred, as if the air itself is swallowing him. His eyes meet mine one last time, and in that moment, I understand. He's not trapped by the rules. He's not bound by the house or the basement. He's been trapped by the not knowing, the mystery of his own death. It was the confusion, the guilt, the unanswered questions that kept him here. And now, knowing the truth, he's finally free to leave. I step back, my throat tight. "You never knew what happened, did you, Dad? You never knew why, but now I do." It's the truth of his death that's been holding him here all this time. The guilt, the pain, the unanswered question of how he fell, why he died, and the unspoken words between him and my mother. That's what kept him bound to this place. And now that I understand it, now that the truth has come to light, he can finally let go. His form flickers once more, and then, as if the last pieces of his being are being pulled away, he begins to fade completely. I feel a rush of relief, a weight lifting from my chest. His figure becomes more transparent, like smoke dissipating into the air. He doesn't look sad anymore, he looks peaceful. And then, just like that, he's gone. The basement, once thick with his presence, is now empty, silent. For the first time in years, I feel the weight of the house lift. The air no longer feels heavy. I know, deep down, that my father is free now. His soul is no longer trapped in this place, wandering in confusion and pain. I stand there for a long moment, staring at the spot where he once stood. The silence around me is comforting, not suffocating. I take a deep breath, feeling the tension leave my body. The past is finally gone. The cycle is over. I turn and walk upstairs, my footsteps light. When I reach the living room, my mother is sitting there, waiting. She doesn't ask what happened. She knows. She can feel it too. The house has changed. It's done, I say quietly, my voice thick with emotion. He's free. She doesn't cry. She doesn't need to. The relief in her eyes is enough. We've both carried this burden for far too long, and now at last we are free. The house feels different now. It feels like home again. For the first time in years, the air is clear. There's nothing left to haunt us. We are free. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe for more creepy tales. If you'd like to support the channel, consider buying me a coffee on Ko-Fi. Every bit helps. Links in the description.